Welcome to part 2 of this installment of What's Eating Us with Maverick Citizen. Please do enjoy.
The retail sector has such an enormous amount of power that they can almost set prices.
Yeah.
Particularly when it comes to kind of fruit or foods that is like milk or tomatoes or so on, that can go bad quickly. That farmers then have to sell. And they have to sell it almost at the price that is offered to them. So they're often price takers. And those, either the retail sector or the manufacturing sector, who has the ability to keep it cool over a longer period and transform it or process the food. So farmers often don't get a good price for it because the price is set by other players. And what this means then is that the farm worker get the rawest deal of the lot because the farm worker actually then subsidize the rest of the country through their labor and their low levels of wages because in order for the system is built on them. And we know that amongst farm workers, there's the greatest level of food insecurity.
Yes.
So there is this injustice almost within the system in which like the farmers are not often get paid a fair price. And then that translates in farm workers not getting a proper wage. But if we are to, just imagine, if we are to pay everyone fairly across the system, it might mean that food prices might increase at the retail level. And so what that might mean is that wages have to be fair in terms of what people's basic needs are. Yeah. So we shouldn't all just go down a barrel of pushing everything down. So we're not advocating for cheap food. We don't think cheap food is often bad food.
Yes, it is.
And cheap food often exploits farm workers.
For sure.
So what we are advocating for is that workers and households should have enough income in order to pay for food that is fair, a price that is fair, which is also fair to the farmer and which is also fair to the farm worker. And for us, that would be the best system.
Yeah, I mean, I think that then, this issue of food insecurity, that the people who actually produce the food are the people who are the most insecure.
Yeah.
And no one ever makes that link it's not just the farmer, the actual farmer who owns the farm and has workers who's producing. That is the ultimate beneficiary. There's workers who are working the land, actually producing the food, but they themselves are not able to afford that food.
Exactly.
And I think that's something that's really important that people need to grapple with. Because we cannot be fighting for the just wages of other workers who are seen, right? So workers who work in the urban areas, you see them every day, and so they plights is right in your face. Whereas these ones who are in the farming areas, fishing, out of sight, their struggles are not recognized.
Can it also just be that as you say, that we keep on clamoring, because there's a lot of people who are clamoring that food prices must go down. Actually, perhaps we should look at it the other way, because it's the equation of affordability is the equation between how much money I've got in the pocket and what something costs. So if I can get more money in my pocket, that also will solve the problem. But it is because the lower we pay for food, the more the farm worker is exploited in the end.
Yeah.
And we have to guard against that from a sense of justice. So actually the food system, we need to overhaul it into such a way that it is fair and just to all the players. But in order for it to be fair and just to all the players, we also need to know who the profit takers are. And what percentage of profits do they get? And that is where transparency comes in. And the retail sector being at the apex almost of the food system, because of their location, has the greatest power. And so they should be able to transform some of these practices because they have power in the system.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to kind of, explore a little bit more of this point where it comes to how much the food basket actually costs versus how much people actually have in their bank accounts or in their wallets, which kind of goes back to this issue of the grant, right? What is the thinking around having a grant that is not even enough to buy a basket of food? And what is the pushback in increasing that grant to at least allow people to be able to buy food, if nothing else,
Yeah, so when we look at our basket of 44 very basic foods that we track on a monthly basis, and just to give you some idea as to what is in the basket.
Yeah.
So it's things like, it's a basket constructed for a household of 7.
Yes.
And why 7? Because we know that in low-income households, those who eat out of the same pot is much larger than the average in the country.
This part of the interview was lost during the recording with Abrahams, which is where he explains that of primary concern within households is transportation costs. Abrahams then proceeds to list the other areas preceding the buying of food.
The second area is electricity, because electricity is needed for cooking, it is needed for security, it is needed for heating. The third area is debt servicing, because halfway through the month, the money runs out and the food runs out, and then the only way to survive is then to take out a loan. And if you don't pay the loan at this month, then you can't take out another loan. So debt servicing. And only then, as number 4, comes food. So if there is a household income on a national minimum wage of about 4,500, and we are spending something around electricity and transport takes up about 56%, or around 2,400 of that 4,500, that leaves you something like just over 1,800 left for food. So there is no way that household can purchase this entire basket of food.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then the question becomes, what do they put in their basket and what do they leave out?
Yeah.
And what they then put into the basket are the starches, the things that make you feel full. So like maize would go in, sugar would go in, cooking oil would go in, perhaps a little bit of potatoes and onions, that would go in. But your vegetables will be left out.
Yeah.
Your fruits will be left out. And that's then where your diabetes and heart blood pressures and your health issues come in. And it's directly connected to the fact, therefore, that households just don't have enough money to buy the diversity of food that is required for proper health.
Yeah. So this is the thing, because it's the argument is there. Like that has made the argument to make food affordable for people to be able to have the diversity of diet that they actually need. And in terms of a public health issue, argument is that we're always channeling people towards being a public health burden by ensuring that they're not able to access what they need. So, how do you advocate for that? How do you convince the powers that be to be responsive to that, because the numbers are there, the evidence is there, the health evidence is there.
Yes, it's unfortunate that in South Africa at the moment, and I dare say globally, in a capitalist system, health don't convince policymakers. It's actually economic benefit. And so we have to connect the fact that the economy is about human beings. If they're not healthy. So, for instance, you have to connect the message that it is no surprise, as I say, when economists argue that there isn't economic productivity in South Africa. We should say, well, so what? Why are you surprised?
Yes.
When people are not eating properly, they're not eating diverse foods.
How are you going to be productive?
How can they be productive?
Yeah, exactly.
So your food system cuts out your ability to be productive.
Yes.
And if you're not productive, you cannot grow your economy.
Yes, you're killing your own workforce.
You're killing your own workforce.
Yeah.
But actually what it also indicates, therefore, is that the food that we feed our children and our families today will have an impact on the South Africa's economic performance in 20 or 30 years from now.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's the link we need to make. Because in a capitalist society, people are dispensable.
Yes.
So if the state is truly concerned about dignity, about the right to life, about future economic activity and productivity and growth, then it must of necessity ensure access to sufficient and nutritious food. So that then brings us to state support. So for instance, the child support grant, which is a very good example. Now, the child support grant is well placed, is well targeted, it reaches children. But the issue is that the rand value of the child support grant is way too low for it to have the effect that we expect it to have. Because currently, when we look at the child support grant, then the grant at the moment is 500 rand. That's the grant. And then when we look at what does it cost us in terms of our calculations to feed a child between the ages of 10 and 13 a sufficient and nutritious meals for the month, then we see it would cost you in the region of about 861.
Yeah.
So the child support grant is about 360 rand too little to provide that. Now, can we ensure, as a first step, that at least the child support grant is sufficient to feed a child proper, and that the child support grant be set at the very minimum at the food poverty line?
Yeah.
And the food poverty line, for instance, is 663. So can there be a connection between the child support grant and eradicating food poverty for all children?
Yeah.
And it seems to us that that's a first step the state could. And if they say there isn't enough money, then our argument is we have to reorganize the budget.
Yes.
Now, the state does that all the time. The state always reorganizes the budget when there are extra cabinet ministers appointed and more money is needed to buy them extra houses and extra cars. The budget is thing. So can we just do it the other way around? And perhaps we can say that the country must be able to afford. The country cannot not afford to pay these children, but we can afford to cut the cabinet by half.
Yeah.
We can afford to cut the provincial executives by half.
Yes.
We can afford to cut parliament by half. And let's see then how much money we save through those actions in order to make it possible for us to ensure every child
I've never been one to entertain the argument that there's no money. There is money.
No, there is money. It's about
the money is not being used appropriately and
it's how you allocate the money.
Yeah.
And so South Africa has money. The question is, how do we allocate it? And we spend too much money on issues that are not directly connected with achieving the visions of the Constitution.
Exactly.
And so we don't need 3 cars per cabinet minister. We need 1. We don't need 6 or 7 security guards. I mean, who did the minister? Who did the minister get onto the wrong side for? Who wants to kill the minister? What has the minister done to deserve security?
That should really be the question.
What did they do wrong to deserve thingy? I don't need security because I haven't harmed anybody. Has the minister harmed somebody? So, I mean, it's those kind of questions. And I mean, they just seem so... And yet it could make such a difference.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a society we're at odds with ourselves and at odds with the Constitution in itself, because what we choose to spend money on and not money on is a reflection, obviously, of,
of our values.
Of the values of that society. We hold. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, I really think you're right. Our blueprint should be going back to the Constitution. Is this fulfilling the mandate that is contained in the Constitution? If it is not, then why are we pursuing it?
Yeah, exactly. And at the very heart, it must be that we take care of our children.
Yes.
Because if we don't take care of our children, then South Africa's future is up on the line.
Yeah. Interesting.
So food is an integral part, because food is what sustains human beings.
Yes.
And because human beings are an integral part of the economy, therefore food is an integral part of our economy. And whether our economy grows or contracts is to a large extent based on access to food.
My name is Zukiswa Pikoli, and this has been another episode of What's Eating Us with Maverick Citizen.